This is very, very dangerous. This is very dangerous precedent because we've got the truth now being hidden by government propaganda. This is not the propaganda machine, of course, of Russia. This is not the propaganda machine of Eastern Europe or even China, we're seeing. This is propaganda and censorship, which is coming in through the British government, and it's also coming in through Western governments. How can we show it in action? Well, we thought we'd come to this amazing article by the Guardian. Here's the headline: How Syria's White Helmets Became Victims of an Online Propaganda Machine. Now, I'm absolutely going to encourage people to get online and seek out this Guardian article, because you must read it for yourself. I hope we're going to give you some pointers at things that you should look for, but this is an incredible piece of crafting of the news. So let's have a look at how this actually works, and just bear with me as I call it up on the other screen here. So we've got the Syrian volunteer rescue workers, known as the White Helmets, have become the target of an extraordinary disinformation campaign that positions them as an Al-Qaeda linked terrorist organisation. The Guardian has uncovered how this counter-narrative is propagated online by a network of anti-imperialist activists, conspiracy theorists and trolls with the support of the Russian government, brackets, which provides military support to the Syrian regime. So there's a lot of stuff in there that if you dare to question the narrative that the British government puts out, or indeed the Guardian, that phrase anti-imperialist activists.
Yes.
Is the Guardian
pro-imperialist?
Yeah,
there must be.
Well, I don't know. It's confusing, isn't it? So this is an extremely dangerous document because of the way it attempts to mislead the public. And we thought we ought to go straight to the source. Let's have a look at the young lady who has actually written this article, Olivia Solon. We can find out a certain amount about her, and I think that's an important thing to do. So she says, senior editorial roles with Wired UK, Mirror. That's a pretty impressive medal to be wearing, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes, she's worked for the Mirror and Bloomberg Business Europe, so into the establishment there. And then she's very pleased that she's had articles published amongst this little lot: Guardian, New Scientist, Wired, Telegraph, Business Life, FTcom, Glamour, Elle, Marketing Week and Music Week. So it's quite interesting, and my curiosity started, well, hang on a minute, where is her Middle Eastern experience? Where is her experience of war zone?
Conflict?
Conflict, where is her experience of the real mechanics of what's going on over the internet? But we'll just give you a little bit more here. So she says that basically she's well practiced in speaking and moderating at events around the world, include Wired 2013, the Pioneers Festival, Maidem, Advertising Week, How the Lights Get In, and the Festival of Media. I've commented on issues relating to digital culture and technology for broadcasters such as Bloomberg, BBC, Channel 4, Radio 4, Sky News, BBC London, Reuters and G4 TV. So this lady has done a lot of establishment work, but she's only been commenting on net-related digital issues.
Yes.
I can't see the background, the in-depth professional background for deep analysis, but she has been commenting. And if you want to see a little bit more from her, then you can come on to this one. So she's got previous jobs. Guardian News. I did phone the Guardian this morning, and they were a bit unsure as to who she was initially. They then said to me, is she freelance? And I said, well, I think she was, but I think she's working for the Guardian. The very helpful lady was not sure whether she was paid Guardian staff, but I was given an email address. And if you look at the pedigree there, it's all freelance stuff. We've got the deputy editor of Wired.co. University of Oxford, always a classic medal there, Mike, 2-1 in Spanish and philosophy. That's not exactly deep digital data networks. No. Okay, so we thought we'd have a look at how this article did its work. So let me just pull this up on screen, and we'll come into this first one here. So we have the article opening with unsupported propaganda statement that the White Helmet counter-narrative is anti-imperialist, conspiracy theorists and trolls supported by the Russian government. And then they quickly follow that up with paragraphs of unsupported mainstream media statements of positive international recognition of the White Helmets. So what the press has been saying, what the international press has been saying about the has been saying about the White Helmets is immediately presented as if it was evidence-based.
Yes.
But very positive narrative put into the reader's mind straight away. Let's bring in the next bit here. We then get a reinforcing paragraph stating it's all the Russian propaganda machine, but the evidence for this is simply from an author who's written a book, and the gentleman concerned is David Patrick Karakos. So in the article, as far as I could see, there was no factual evidence whatsoever to say that this was a Russian propaganda campaign.
Right.
I'm going to read the article again very carefully, but having looked at it prior to the news, I could not see this evidence. It all hung on the comment of this one man. So we bring in the next bit. This is where it starts to get clever. It says those nasty Russians have scooped up anti-American activists, bloggers and researchers, giving them a Russian media platform.
Really?
So this is Russia being driven into people's heads, but they're claiming that anybody who dares question the White Helmets is actually working for the Russians. And this is quite interesting because we then have a gentleman used as an expert, Scott Lucas, the professor of international politics. That should be Birmingham University. And he described the overall campaign as agitation propaganda. Participants don't realise they're being used as pawns. But when I spoke to Mr. Lucas on the phone earlier today, one of the things that amazed me was that he had no personal experience on the ground in Syria.
He had never actually been there?
I was unsure whether that was the case, Mike, but it appeared to be. I need to look at my notes again. But he was very, very nervous the moment I started to say, have you actually been on the ground in the war zone looking at the work of the White Helmets? He said he hadn't, but he was relying on sources. He said, I have sources in the war zone.
Would those be Al-Qaeda sources?
Well, we don't know. We can have a look into those. But isn't it remarkable that an expert used to try and undermine somebody like Vanessa Beeley, who has been on the ground, had not been on the ground himself? A very interesting conversation, and I'll certainly give more of that as soon as I can. Where does that take us? Well, we reinforce the propaganda for the good works of the White Helmets with a big plus that they documented the chemical attack in Khan Sheikhoun. So the fact that the White Helmets said something about chemical weapons, they are the real thing, Mike.
Yes.
Can't challenge them.
Yes, and of course the subsequent UN investigation didn't actually go to Khan Sheikhoun to get any evidence themselves.
No, and there is no evidence produced in this document about chemical weapons at all.
Right.
And we would say, because there isn't any, that directly pins this on the Assad regime. So let's bring in the next one. And that is that with no evidence of their own, The Guardian promotes the views of researchers who are apparently studying the spread of disinformation and propaganda online. And they quote a gentleman called Phil Mentzer's tool Hoaxy, which tracks misinformation. So we've now jumped from where is the evidence for misinformation to the fact we have a tool which tracks something which hasn't been defined.
Right.
I hope people are still with me. I'm trying to be as concise with this as possible. They also mention another analytics firm called Graphica. Graphica is interesting because its work has been commissioned by the Syria campaign.
That's the Syria campaign which created the White Helmets?
Yes, so that's
Yes.
a little bit circular, Mike.
Yes.
little bit circular, but the Guardian doesn't want to tell us
But in
that.
the spirit of 2017, that's pretty independent research there.
Pretty independent. So what we then do is say that Mensa's Hoaxy and Graphica and a lady called Kate Starbird from the University of Washington have identified Vanessa Beeley and 21st Century Wire as the most influential disseminators of fake news on the white helmets. So there's no analysis of the evidence that Vanessa has put forward with 21st Century Wire. We're now beginning to spin the whole story.
Yes, and this is consistently the case. The message is never attacked. It's always the messenger. So you've got to ask the question, Brian, why is the message itself never attacked? It's, to my mind, quite clear that it's because they are not in a position to attack it.
Truth is a very powerful thing, isn't it, Mike? So let's bring in the really the bottom chunk here. So at the end of the article, they get heavily into what they call the mannequin challenge. And what is this? This is nothing else than a character assassination, mainly of Vanessa Beeley. And I've said here, at no stage does Olivia Solon or The Guardian ever produce counter evidence to undermine the evidence and analysis of Vanessa Beeley and 21st Century Wire. Indeed, The Guardian admits in this article that terrorists have been operating inside the white helmets. It's a sentence, which is a couple of sentences towards the very end of the article, where you say, hang on a minute, here is The Guardian admitting that terrorists were operating inside this organisation. And my brain says, well, oh, are they still operating inside? But there is no analysis by The Guardian. So if people want to see how mainstream press, The Guardian, this particular journalist, Olivia Solon, how they can craft an article to mislead the public, you need to read this one. But double standards, I'm afraid, Mike, because if you attempt to check up on this lady and what she really thinks, the first thing you find is that her Twitter account is blocked. So don't think you're going to see what she's really saying, because she's going to censor you. So believe what I say, except when I censor you from knowing what I say.
Or, well, at least you don't get any opportunity to give her any opinion back.
No, well, goodness me, we can't have that sort of thing going on, Mike. Now let's bring in Scott Lucas. This is the man I spoke to before. By his accent, I would guess he was an American. He's the man who's made the statement in the article, Agitation Propaganda. When I asked him whether he believed that all of this was orchestrated by the Russians, he seemed to indicate that he absolutely did. I pressed him very firmly on what was his experience on the ground, his personal experience on the ground. He got very, very nervous, and subsequently he put the phone down on me. So
another one.
Yeah. So it's unfortunate that when you question these individuals as to what the real substance behind them is, they get a little bit spooked. So we'll follow through the dangers of this, because if we look at this journalist again, I came across this article, and I find this one of the, I'm going to say, scariest articles I have seen in some time, Mike. We've got Karim the AI delivers psychological support to Syrian refugees. And what this article is saying is that millions, hundreds of thousands, millions fleeing the war, the carnage, the bloodshed, the death in Syria. These are traumatized people, but we're now using AI machines which can text conversations to people who are beginning to suffer PTSD. Of course, AI is tied in with profit. And this is all promoted by this very same journalist. So part of this article says Eugene Ban, the co-founder and CTO of X2AI, says there are barely any mental health services in refugee camps. People have depression, anxiety, a sense of hopelessness and fear of the unknown. To get Karim into the hands of refugees and aid workers, X2AI has teamed up with a non-governmental organisation called Field Innovation Team, which delivers tech-enabled disaster relief.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but AI is very much in its experimental stages. So what is going on here is that Eugene Ban appears to be delighted to have a captive audience of lab rats, of 1 million or so lab rats in refugee camps that he can test and experiment on for future profit.
Immensely vulnerable people. Immensely vulnerable people. They're vulnerable to the AI technology. They're vulnerable to what these NGOs are really doing. But as you say, what really drives AI? Is it the love of mankind, or is it profit? And I'll bring this lady up because she's mentioned in this article, and I just found this incredible. Here is his lady involved with this field initiative team, and Desiree, and she's heavily into the work of FEMA in America.
Yeah.
And do you like that picture? Do you like that image? I don't get a warm feeling from this, but we can't get into the truth about what the white helmets are and the fact that we know there's terrorists operating amongst them. We're into making a bit more profit out of AI off the back of Syrian refugees. I'm going to stop there because I found myself becoming more and more uncomfortable as I looked into this Guardian article this morning. I'm going to end by saying, please read it and please look at what this reporter is really saying. And if you agree with the concerns in our analysis, then please email her and let's take this lady on in a polite, reasonable way. I think this is appropriate. I'm going to put Mike back on screen here. He's alongside Vanessa Beeley. Really want to say wonderful work from Vanessa, and isn't it fascinating that the good work of Vanessa Beeley with 21st Century Wire, and I hope a little bit of input from the UK column, has resulted in The Guardian having to run this appallingly written assassination piece on the work of Vanessa Beeley. So we have a journalist who has, it would appear, not been on the ground in that war zone. Certainly she's using experts that haven't been on the ground in the war zone to see what the facts are. She sits in a cozy office in London or San Francisco, I'm not sure where, and character assassinates Vanessa Beeley. I feel very, very annoyed about this, and I think the Guardian and that particular reporter should be held to account. Mm-hmm. But what can we see? We can see that so powerful has been the reporting over Syria in particular, I suspect also defence and some other issues, that we now see the British government attempting to bully internet companies into censoring social and alternative media. And of course, if we allow the British government to get away with this, then truth goes out the window, and we are going to be marching even quicker into this, I'm going to call it a fascist state. I think it's becoming easier to see.
Yeah.
So we're going to say well done to Patrick Henningsen, Vanessa Beeley for all that good work. We're also going to say well done to all the other people who are putting out properly researched material on the internet. And isn't it a wonderful end for 2017 to see that there are shakes in the establishment because of that effort.